Live. All right, it
Live.
finally connected. Hi, everyone. We'll give everyone a second to jump in here. But we're super excited to be here for another indie author spotlight. My name is Jaylan. I am an editor with One Brilliant Arc. We are a story studio that specifically focuses on amplifying the stories from marginalized voices who have faced silencing in the past. And we are super excited to be partnering with Jess to do these indie author spotlights. Jess, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and
Yeah.
say what Wildest Dreams is about?
Yes, yeah. So my name is Jessica Ann, and I am a published author. I write fantasy fiction, but I also write on my Substack, which is called Wildest Dreams. And part of my goal with my Substack is to help as many other authors live out their wildest dreams of publishing their books. So this is kind of my way of giving back to other authors who are on their journey as well.
Awesome. And we are super excited to have our author of the week with us. This is Larada Horner-Miller. Do you want to introduce yourself, Larada, and tell us about the story that you're currently working on?
Okay, my name is Larada Horner-Miller, and I am working on autofiction. And if you're not familiar with that genre, it's autobiography fictionalized. And the name of the book is, at this point, the name of the book is Eyewitness to Healing. And I'm sure that it will have some changes or at least a subtitle to add to it. And what it is I fictionalized the story of I'm an incest survivor, and I have fictionalized that story. And it's been brewing in my heart and soul for 10 years. I wrote it. I wrote the 50,000 words of it during NaNoWriMo in 2016.
Oh,
And I
wow.
put it on the back burner, and I had another big writing project that was just dumped in my lap. And I got to write a biography of a famous square dance caller. That mean a lot to you, but I'm a square dancer, and I was given that privilege. And so I put it on the back burner, and then along came, let's see, I did a Christmas memoir, and then I started a poetry series. Like this book just kind of hung in the shadow, you know.
Yeah.
And I started a five books poetry series, and I got two books done. And then what happened for me was last year, the Epstein files came up and slapped me in the face, but not as badly as it would have if I hadn't dealt with the issues. But I was talking to a trauma therapist I was going to, and she suggested. I told her I wanted to be an advocate for survivors, and we were brainstorming ideas about what we could do, what I could do. I could do a web page, I could do this, and all of a sudden it just came up. I could get this book published. So that is how it came to be now.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow. Well, that is very brave of you. That is amazing.
Yes. Definitely, such an amazing story. And it's really interesting to hear. You also said that you've published some cookbooks in the past?
Right? I published my mother's delicious recipe, and I published three cookbooks. She died in 2013, and so I started giving to my family cookbooks. So there were three volumes. I wanted to do it all in one, and it was too much. So I did it in three volumes, and my family said, "Oh my gosh, these are so gorgeous! Why don't you sell them?" So
That's
I've done that.
awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun, and it's really cute. I did something very unique. I scanned in her recipe cards, so the recipes are in her handwriting, and of course, so this gorgeous cursive writing. But she scored everything. She said, "Oh, very good," or whatever, and then she gave credit to the cook she got it from, and so it's quite a collection.
Yeah, she's much more organized than I am with my
Same.
She was
Oh,
amazing, absolutely amazing.
Amazing.
wow. That's so special to have the piece of her like that. I am curious for everyone tuning in, though. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation with Loretta. But we're kind of proving here that the work of storytelling and creativity takes many different forms, and all of them are beautiful and all of them have purpose. But I'd love to hear in the comments from people watching what genre or medium of creativity you like to create. and we'll continue hearing from Larada about her experience with all of these that she's dabbled in, from poetry to cooking
Mhm.
to autofiction writing, to biography writing.
Yeah, you've done it
Um,
all.
yeah.
Well, and there's another one that I absolutely love, and that's audiobooks. And so
Oh.
I've recorded 3 of my audiobooks. I have another one that I need to revise, but I wasn't able to do my last 2 poetry books because I was recovering from a pretty horrible injury, and so I wasn't able to do that. So I'm in Panama right now. My husband and I moved to Panama, and so when I flew back to New Mexico at the 1st of March, I took an extra suitcase. I put a suitcase inside a suitcase, big suitcase. So I came back with all my recording equipment. And
Okay.
what I'm going to do is ask our landlord if I can borrow the bathroom next door and convert it into a recording studio. And if I can't, I'll come up with something else, because the program that I follow, he has so many ideas on makeshift recording studios. I was lucky in New Mexico because I had a walk-in closet. So I had a
Okay.
beautiful studio, and my husband was great and helped me convert it, and was really, really gracious and let me keep it going while I was recording. But I love reading my own words. It just blesses my heart. And it's a good editing tool for
It
any
is,
writers out
yes.
there.
Sure.
It's a great editing
For
tool.
sure. Definitely. I attest to that. There's something so special, though, having a story that's, you leave your voice. It's another form of ownership over your story. Or, with your mother's cookbooks, you had those recipes in her handwriting. Um, I think that in you sharing your autofiction, there's something so powerful about you owning that story, that really hard part of your story, and being able to give it to other survivors to let them know, like, you're not walking through this healing alone. But that process of owning the story and putting things in ink is a very difficult process to go through. And I can see how it would take you 10 years, and it kind of just lingers in the shadow. It's a long process to go through to own this story and put it out there as the truth that it is. Is there something that along your healing process, I I will say, Jess, we talked last week with
Yeah.
Ella, when she was talking about how writing her fiction book helped her heal from her CPTSD. So we're kind of having this theme of, like,
Wow.
fiction writing
Yeah.
is very healing. So what was your experience with that, Loretta? Did writing this autofiction help you heal in a way that you didn't expect from your experience?
Yes, it did, because I think that by putting it down, by taking it outside of myself and putting it on paper, it made me realize the potency of it, because as I've gone through um, lots of therapy. I'm in recovery now. I've been sober for 37 years, and recovery has helped me a lot. Um, but I think that the writing, I've always believed that writing is healing, but the writing of it, by getting it outside of myself, really has helped me see myself in that part of my story. I remember early on, I did some workshops about memoir, the difference between memoir and autobiography.
I was actually going to
Because,
ask you. That was my
yeah,
next question. I was like,
yeah,
why you chose certain, like,
yeah,
autofiction versus memoir versus,
yeah.
go on.
I'll answer that in a minute. But I was doing some workshops in Albuquerque, and so I looked up the definition because my students were asking what's the difference between memoir and autobiography. The really amazing part of memoir is that it's just a section. It's just a spotlight on an area of your life, and autobiography is more the big story. Well, when I thought about writing this story to begin with, I never thought about autofiction. I didn't even know it was genre. I just was writing this story.
Mm-hmm.
But both of my perpetrators are family members. And I have not confronted, and I shouldn't say confront, I have not shared this story with a person in my life that it could be very harmful for. And one of the people, it could have been very, not harmful, but hurtful, one of them has passed away. So that made it much easier to deal with. And then the other part of it is that I know this part of my family doesn't read my writing. So it's like, I'm not, I am identifying who the perpetrators are, but by fictionalizing it, it gave that little bit of a cushion that if people who do know me and grew up with me, I grew up in a little ranching community. I mean, there were 4 in my graduating class. So what a different world that is than being an anonymous person. So what this, by fictionalizing it and by saying that right up front, then when people who know me read it, they're going to have to try to figure out what's the fiction and what's the not. So that was the reason I didn't do memoir, because I knew memoir was going to be too close. I mean, that was going to be laying my soul bare, and I knew I couldn't do that.
Fair. Yeah. That's a heavy story to carry too. And you kind of opened up a whole nother conversation, because everyone talks about how scary it is to share our writing. But when you're sharing something that's so true and so big and so heavy to carry, I can understand how it's really, you have to carry that responsibility of not only how it affects you to tell the story to strangers, but also how it affects people that you grew up with and your family members who aren't ready to confront the truth and help you carry it.
Yes, and so, I've read a lot of go-tos on memoirs and everything, and about the legalities of it and how you have to be careful here and careful there. So that was probably the other reason why I chose to do the fictionalizing. But, also in the fictionalizing, it gave me that room to kind of expand the story, because my healing, there's 2 people in the story. There's Ellie, or Ellen Marie, and Laura. It's a story in 2 voices, which I read years ago when I was getting my degree. We read poems in 2 voices, and that absolutely stuck out in my mind forever. But
can you just really quick, can you explain that a little bit more, what you mean, if people are unfamiliar, like the story? Is it 2 like main characters, like separate, or?
Yes. It's 2 separate characters, and they alternate chapters.
Okay.
And their lives become intertwined because of the event at the beginning.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
So it's and thanks for asking that, because that's not, I'm a teacher and I'm always thinking of things, so thank you. But no, so I didn't have one person that my life affected as I started going through the healing process, or one support person. I had a variety of people. I had the AA community, I had therapy that helped me, I had my church. I ended up going back to my church. I had a variety. But what I've done in this story is laser focus it to Ellie and Laura and their husbands, and how what they're doing in healing and recovery is affecting, and what she did. She was the catalyst. She was the starting point. Laura was, and how one person can affect 3 people. But we know that that's a larger dynamic. So that's the layout of the book.
Interesting. I really like that. From, even though it is fiction, do both of the women in the story represent you, essentially? Are both those your characters, or is one like the mentor, the one who helped you, type of thing?
Right. Yeah. Laura. Okay. Yeah. I'm Laura. That's me in the book. And then Ellie, or Ellen Marie, is probably as a compilation of all the people that helped me.
Okay. Wonderful.
And kind of the stories that go along. So, and it's, one of the things that we know in life. I mean, I'm 72 years old, and I've had lots of losses in my life. And the thing about it is I don't think everybody, and we all grieve differently. My mother was a proponent of that, and I wrote about my grief process in one book. It was a grief memoir, and her big thing was that everybody grieves differently. Just do it your way and honor your way, And so it may seem like a strange idea to think that you need to grieve about loss from what the the incest or, sexual abuse or domestic abuse, whatever it is, that any of those subjects. But a part of me was lost. One of my things that I have written about, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, is honoring the 18-year-old. Not, and that is someone beyond, I was abused as a baby, and some people would have a hard time believing that, but I'm believing this is a community that can accept that kind of information. But when I was in treatment, it came up. So I was abused as a baby. And then my half-brother, was 10 years older than me, and he started abusing me when I was 4, and it went all the way to when I was 12. And he never raped me, but it would have been the next step. But he was drafted and sent off to the Army. So I think that would have been the next thing. So, those are the parts that underlay that 18-year-old. And the 18-year-old was somebody who got involved with an abusive husband, an alcoholic abusive husband, who beat the shit out of her when she tried to break up with him. So as the healing has happened, I've had to honor that 18-year-old. So, the grief process is gigantic in the midst of all of this. And that's why, to me, this book is so important, is that I address, the grief has to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the way in addressing the grief is writing the book,
Yeah, for sure. I know the last time that we talked about your story, teaser alert for anyone who is tuning in, we do have another podcast episode with Larada kind of really digging into this story on our Let's Fix Stories podcast coming out in the future. So stay tuned for that. But the last time we talked about your story, we were saying how there's this cruel irony almost that the people who have to carry these very heavy truths of, the pain happened to them, the abuse happened to them. Now they're facing a world where people who can't handle the depth of that truth shut them down and don't believe them and don't offer them that space to heal and witness their healing in that way. So what was it about writing that helped you become your own witness when no one else was willing to? And how are you balancing not only having to speak your truth and work through the processing of this painful story, but also kind of teach others how to handle your story?
I think one of the most powerful things that came out of that Let's Fix Stories talk that we had was the juxtaposition of the two worlds. And that I had not, when the rendition that Jaylon saw was that I had put a crowd around the situation as being very loving and empathetic, when in reality, what was it Charles says? What in the hell is she doing? Charles gave a very, very strong statement. And so it made me realize that, and that's probably, I'm in Codependence Anonymous too. That's probably the coda side of me going, I'm going to take care of this world that's so bad, right? And so by framing that the way you did, that's been a major part in my mind about how can I show that world the way it really is. I was fortunate as the survivor. I did not deal with this until I was, let me think back to it. I was 28 years old when I had the first flashback, because that's what happens, Thank God that there is the storage in our mind and our psyche until we are ready and able to take it. And I had gone to a Christian community to live for 6. I'd separated from my first husband and gone to a Christian community to do with some healing and decide whether I was going to divorce him or not. And I was laying in a bunk bed. Now, this is interesting because it's bizarre, but this is the way flashbacks happen. I was laying in a bunk bed, on the bottom bunk, looking up at the bunk above me, and I saw the movie in my brain of my brother molesting me in my bunk bed when I was a child. And that was the first flashback I had.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, oh my God. And so that stayed, so I think, I've got a question for you all I'm going to pose. as I'm working even though I haven't written, I was telling Jalan that I couldn't write when I was in the States because I spent 3 weeks in my ranch house in Colorado, and this was in the little town where a lot of the abuse happened. So I was shut down. But as soon as I got on the train from Raton to Albuquerque, man, my laptop was flying. But as I was dealing with what I headed towards, because it's revision, it's add more details, it's this, it's that. It's like, how much of the detail, the specific detail, is really necessary to share? Because I don't want it to be a salacious sort of, book. One friend of ours, I wrote my first book 2014. It was called This Tumbleweed Landed, and it was a poetry memoir book about growing up in the 50s and 60s in this little ranching community. Of course, nothing about the incest. But he said to my husband, he said, well, you ought to tell her to write about sex and violence, and she'll sell more books. And that was like, that's not me. That's not what I write about. That's, in fact, that's the side of me. I've dealt with the violence in a way I don't want to have. So my question to you is, how much of the specific detail do I need to include? And I would say to the people who are on the chat with us, what is your thoughts about that?
Definitely.
I mean, my immediate reaction would be that it's in your story. That's not the point of the story. So that it's not. It's the point of your story is the healing, is the grief, is the processing, is coming out a whole person on the other end. And so I would say that's the focus that actually including, I personally would not include it. Of course, I don't, there's plenty of books that have sex and violence and for other reasons, and they're great if you want to read them, so it's just the appropriate place. It doesn't seem like that would be for your book, but ultimately, it really is up to you, because this is your story, but
yes. The whole point of this is taking ownership back over something that was stolen from you. And I think that that's where the power of this story is. And I agree with Jess. The correct answer is it's up to you. But it's also really hard. I appreciate you asking this question because I feel like this works in with what we were talking about over in One Brilliant Arcs newsletter all last month. We were talking about writing with intimacy and how when we tell our stories, you put the truth in ink. And sometimes you need to see the truth written on paper, and you need to have that reckoning. You need to have, that speaking of truth. There's something powerful that happens there. So in that sense, sometimes you do err on the side of sharing every little detail. But it's really hard in this world that we live in because people take advantage of those details. And it's, being vulnerable is dangerous with all the cruel intentions that are in this world. And, it's really hard. People don't know how to handle this truth in a respectful way. So some people, will read your story and read it for the wrong reasons. They're not looking for healing. They're looking to, take advantage of the details that you share in an unhelpful way. So, there's a hard balance there. And I feel like the details that you're sharing, because you're writing your book in order to offer yourself as a witness to someone else who's walked this journey and hasn't had someone as a good witness to help their healing journey, right? So if you share details that other people can see themselves in, I think those details are the most important to share because that's where the resonance happens. That's where people realize, oh, this story is for me. I've walked this story too, and now I'm not alone. So the details that I think are more important for you to share are not necessarily about the sex and violence and making it, so that other people can read it gratuitously, but you're looking to share the details about how it feels, about what you walked through, because that's where the survivors that you're writing for are going to connect with your story because they're going to see themselves in those small moments. So that would be my answer. But again, I really do love this question, and I love how this can be a whole conversation, and it's so dependent on all the different perspectives. So I'm definitely looking forward to hearing in the comments other people's thoughts on this. But
Yeah.
did that spark anything for you, Loretta?
Yeah, you know what it did? Yeah, it did. It really did. Because Laura is the main character, but Ellie is really that counter healing face and everything. And I was just thinking of something that my sponsor said to me one day. Whenever she became my sponsor, if you don't know who the sponsor is, it's somebody that walks you through the steps and has been sober longer than you have. And so one day we were talking, I think it was when we first met, and I was telling her my story, and she was like, I can help you. I can be your sponsor. I can work with you, but just know I've never experienced the incest issues. And you know what? It's not affected our relationship because she can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality of that is that this can be a story. If the focus is more on healing than it is on anything else, this can be a book that is more universal. That's kind of one of my ideas, is that, so much of it, I have a book out, a poetry book, is my truth universal. And, I think it is, no matter what, that part of what I have to say is universal to everybody, because I'm willing to say it, because I'm willing to put it on paper. I'm willing to go through the process and publish it and get it out there. But I think this is such an intimate topic that it could really speak to somebody, that maybe is a loner and never received the support and love that they are just thirsting and hungry for, and see that you brought this out so wonderfully, that the title Eyewitness to Healing, it takes a village, it takes somebody else to witness my healing. And I never thought of that before, but that's been so true for me. And so just by hearing it, by reading it, it could be universal to someone even outside of the survivor world.
Yeah, definitely. I think just even if someone can't relate to it directly, meaning that they went through the same experience, I think we've all had experiences where we've been hurt by someone, where we've been through a difficult moment. And so just seeing you overcome what you've been through, I think is inspiring for anyone to see that you have had, I'm just amazed that you have led this long life of continually doing your inner work and healing yourself. That's really, I hope to be, when I am your age, I hope that I am still continuing to do the work and still continuing to become a better person. And the fact that you're still sharing your words and your writing is very inspiring. So
Oh, thank you.
For sure. For sure. Well, kind of speaking to this, one of the questions that we like to ask authors who come on the Indie Author Spotlight is, what do you hope that readers feel or remember when they encounter your story?
I hope that they are able to balance the two people, Ellie and Laura. And I hope, to start with, I hope that they can see themselves in the crowd at the beginning of the book, that they can see that event as being pivotal both for Ellie and Laura. But then as they go through the book, I really hope that any reader can identify with one or both, or with the husbands, because there's 4 people that are going to be in this story, 4 and more.
Mm-hmm.
And that when they close the book, when it's done, that they can say to themselves, it was worth reading. It was worth hearing that message.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed my life in a way I had no idea it was going to when I started it. That would be awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no doubt that readers who experience this story will feel that, because again, just the fact that you are willing to put this truth down on paper and share your words this way, share a story of your healing is so impactful. And you mentioned it at the beginning, like it's also very timely too, because I think it's always been difficult for survivors to be recognized, because again, as humans, we're not good at learning how to carry other people's stories when they're heavy.
Yeah.
That's something that
Mhm.
with One Brilliant Arc we hope to teach people how to do and demonstrate how to do well ourselves. But it's something that as humans it doesn't come naturally to us, especially humans in the world today. So this story, like you said, is very timely because you're actually walking people through this moment of, let me put you in the shoes of someone who has lived this. Let's look through their eyes for a moment and feel what they've felt. And now you can learn how to help them carry this better.
Mhm.
So you're teaching them empathy,
Well,
but this is also a story for people who need to be reminded to believe survivors and witness their truth and validate their truth.
mhm. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
even thinking actually at the end of this, if there is anyone watching today or recording, maybe you would have some suggestions for resources that we can drop
Yes.
in the link. So if someone is watching this and they are, a survivor as well, or know someone, we have some links that we can direct people to, because these are heavy subjects we're talking about. So I want to
Yeah.
make sure
Yeah.
we're also providing that additional help. And it sounds like you might have a well of resources you can direct people to.
Yes, I do. I do. The one that comes to mind first is, I think it's Rain. In fact, I was going to look at just RAINN. I think there's an extra N. Maybe not. I'll look it up while we're talking.
Okay.
But I was going to say a minute ago, and I got off on a tangent and went the other direction. I didn't have the experience, because I want to share this to. This is kind of one of those important pieces too. I never talked to my mother or my dad about this until I was in treatment. Went to treatment at 35 years of age. So see, I got my first memory at 28, and so I told my mother and dad about my half brother, and I semi confronted her about a fact that I remembered. Well, no, I guess this did happen. Sorry, I need to go back. This did happen in treatment. It's hard to keep it all straight sometimes. But when I was no, I know. Okay. Treatment in 1988 was for codependency. Found out I was an alcoholic. Told my mom and dad about the incest with my half brother. And alluded to my mother that I had a memory that she walked in on him molesting me, and she turned around and walked away. And she said, "Oh no, that didn't happen." Not condemning, but just no, that didn't happen. So 4 years, 1992, I went to sexual trauma treatment because they started getting a bunch like memories that were coming, and my mind was trying to make one memory out of just two, or I think it was just two or three. So they came, my mother and dad, God bless them, came to family week there. And I was in New Mexico, and they came, and my ex-husband did too. My second husband, I've been married several times. Anyway, and the therapist, they set the family week up with encountering the issue that is bothering the person so much with your mom, your dad, your husband. So with my dad, he was hilarious. He's this old cowboy. He couldn't have told you his feelings if his life depended on it. But I had just been there a couple of weeks or a month before, and during calving season, and lost the cow. The cow died during the birth process. So we scooped up the calf and brought it back to our house and bottle fed it until it could get it to somewhere taken care of. And so I sat in the back of the pickup with the calf on the drive back to the house. And what he said was, "I really liked when Larada helped take care of that calf. That was the best he could do." And that was phenomenal. And then my mother sat down in the hot seat, and she was already crying because she's this wonderful lady. And she said, "Larada, I am so sorry that I am going to make me cry. I'm so sorry that I denied the fact that I walked in on you, and I did walk in on you, and I did not stop him. And I'm not kidding. What happened at that moment, my mother and I had always had a good relationship. She supported my recovery. She supported me through some absolute horrendous acting out years. She loved me totally. But during that moment, our relationship was totally mended completely. And we cried and sobbed and cried and sobbed. But it was like that moment changed everything. So the reason why I share that is that it's so important to know that as this, and it's going to be in the book too, from 1988 to 1992 to 2026, and I'm still, I just had a memory come up recently, which is like bizarre. It's an ongoing thing, and it's a God-given thing, because if we got all the memories at once, it would just short circuit us, as for sure. But that was an experience I will never forget, ever.
Wow.
And that's got to be. And that's got to be one that I include. I haven't got that in the book yet.
That one definitely needs to be in the book.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
That's such a tangible example of what it means when someone is honest and validates the truth with you. Learning how to be that witness. That's the turning point, is when people can learn how to witness your story and validate your honesty. And that's the first step of healing. And if someone isn't willing to do that, then you're kind of blocked from that healing. So I think that moment definitely has to be in your story, because that's the turning point. That's what you're trying to help people get to, is, let's look at these really hard things honestly together. And that's, again, something that is very timely in our culture, because, in this moment in the world, it's always been something that we haven't been great at, is, supporting survivors. But I think that especially now, it's time for us to learn, so that less people have to walk this road alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for paving the way, Larada,
Yes.
with your story, being brave enough to, like Jess said, like you said, go through the work, be brave enough to put it down in ink. Thank you, everyone who.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you for those of you who listened and have witnessed to this conversation. And like Jess said, we'll put those links. If this is a topic that has impacted you, put some links down below. Definitely, take that step forward in your healing. You deserve it. And thank you. I wanted to shout out Dr. Jessnell. Thank you so much for joining us. Greetings to you as well. And Larada, before we wrap up, do you want to tell people, also we'll put the links down below, but tell people where they can find your stories and witness some of your amazing creativity?
Most definitely. My website is laradasbooks.com. So I'll spell it for you, because my name's very different. It's LARAD as in David AS BOOKS.com. And I wanted to add just one thing. I'm 5,000 miles away from where it happened. And I don't think that's an accident. That's one of the things that I'm a strong believer of, is, I'm a Christian, and through this all, my God has really put me in this spot today on 2026 to be able to write this story and have the distance.
Yeah.
The distance. You remember Ernest Hemingway and a lot of the people that did the expat lifestyles had to get away from the United States to write about their experience in the United States. So it's an interesting thing that just came to me today. So
definitely, there's something so powerful about, that physical act of walking through your story and seeing the progress that you've made. And you're right, like, nothing happens on purpose. I mean, nothing happens not on purpose. There's always a reason for everything.
There is, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, everyone, and we will talk to you all next week. We have loved this time, and we're very grateful for all of you. Um,
Yes. It was so
thank
great
you.
to meet you, Loretas, and good luck with
Yes,
the rest of your book. And we will be following along.
thank
And
you.
hopefully it'll be published out. Do you have like, I know you said you don't have a date yet, but is it this year, next year? Do you have a general goal?
I would love to get it out this year. I
Okay.
would absolutely love to get it out this year, but my editor will probably say something different. Because
We'll see.
yeah, I have a real strong feeling. Whenever I wrote the biography of this great aunt scholar, she sent the manuscript back to me and said, rewrite,
Oh.
you need to add yourself to this biography. So I did go, Joanna, I did go to the ranch house, and I told everybody there, leave me alone. I worked for 2 weeks and I rewrote it. So I already know the system. So if that be the case, I'll be ready for it. But I love the suggestions that you and Charles gave me, and just the suggestions today. And it just makes me really anxious to get pen to paper, to get to a coffee shop. That's
There
my
we
goal.
go.
There are like
Yes.
there's like 20 coffee shops in this little community, 20 or 30. And my goal is to go right, take a picture, and then tell them I'm writing in their coffee shop, and
So
do a little bit of advertising for them. But because I'm a Natalie Goldberg follower. I don't know if you all know who she is, but she
Yes.
is she is Writing Down the Bones. If you haven't read it, it's a phenomenal book. And she lived in Taos. I had the privilege of being around her when I was in the Albuquerque area, and coffee shops are a mainstay because it gets you out of that getting away from here. This is my
Yes.
writing space, but the creative juices a lot of times don't happen here. They happen when I'm gone. So it's like writing on the train. Writing on the train was
Yes.
phenomenal. That was like,
Definitely.
and what was hilarious, let me add one more thing that happened. This is a suggestion that Joanne and Charles gave me, and I was thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. I was so frustrated. So I stopped and I started knitting because I'm a knitter. And as soon as I started knitting, an idea came to me. And so I put the knitting down and I immediately added it to the story, and it was exactly what I needed at the time. So
that's great.
sometimes getting away
Awesome.
from that is a
I'm a
great
knitter
idea.
also. I actually made the sweater.
Well, and you know what? I'm following you on Substacks. I just got your first hello thing, so I'm like excited to.
Oh,
I didn't
yay.
realize it was you until you said you were on Wildest Dreams, and I thought, oh, I just got it today. So we're connected.
Yay! Yes. So tips for everyone who is a writer and also joining us. Follow our Substacks. Keep joining in these conversations with
Yes.
us. There's lots of community and tips for creatives there, and yeah, we're just so grateful for our community and for those of you who are a part of it. Thank you, Kyra, for joining us and joining in and participating in these great conversations, because they're only great because of the people who are willing to share so honestly and show up for these conversations.
Let me just add a commercial real quick. This is one of the best experiences I've ever had. Just know that the Let's Fix stories was just so warm and so affirming. People a lot of times
That's
think
amazing.
that whenever you share your work and get out there that it's going to be an ugly experience. It was absolutely glorious. This has just been a celebration today. So,
Yay.
do it. If you're a writer, do it.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. To follow up on that, there will be another link down below in the show notes, but we offer free story audits, free editing sessions for anyone who's willing to share their story and come on a podcast with us. So that's the Let's Fix Stories that Loretta is talking about, and we would love for any of you who are willing to share your story and get it ready to impact the world. That's what we do over at One Brilliant Arc. So thank you again for joining us, everyone. We will let you get back to your evening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.